Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. A massive redevelopment plan has been approved on the west side of Vancouver, the Jericho Lands. We're going to talk about how the scope of that project is going to change the shape of Vancouver moving forward. We're also going to talk about a couple of pre-sales that are launching and why we might be seeing some competition entering the pre-sale market that's going to benefit consumers. Real quick, if this is your first time to the channel, my name is Hassan. I'm a real estate agent in the Vancouver area, and I make educational real estate content to help you on your real estate journey. I also make content designed to help you make your move in and around Vancouver. So if that sounds interesting to you and you wanted to chat with me one-on-one, you can book me for a free call in the Calendly link below. But regardless, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss a future video. All right, easily one of the most controversial development proposals that has been put forth in the city of Vancouver was just approved by Vancouver City Council. The Jericho Lands, which is essentially in West Point Grey, over the next 2 to 3 decades, will now be redeveloped into multiple buildings to heights of 49 stories, with retail, with hotel, with park space, childcare. A new city essentially is being formed at the Jericho Lands, and this is essentially just south of West 4th, in between West 4th and West 8th, on the Point Grey side. And needless to say, this project was met with a lot of opposition, which we'll talk about. Now, this project here, Jericho Lands, owned by 3 of the First Nations communities, so they will actually be leading forward this project. Of course, they'll have development partners. So over the next 2 to 3 decades, we're going to see the west side of Vancouver completely change shape. And of course, Point Grey, west side of Vancouver, predominantly has been a single family residential area, not just single family, but luxury, high-end, large estate properties. And so now bringing in this multifamily aspect is essentially bringing in double the population that Point Grey already has. Point Grey population right now, 12,000. This is expected to bring in 24,000 people, about 12 to 13,000 homes when all is said and done, 20% of which will be social housing as well. So a complete change to the community, as I mentioned, met with a lot of opposition. And even though council heard from, I think it was about 50 or 60 opponents to the project in the process, they still move forward to approve it. And so now at this stage, the First Nations communities will be looking at rezoning and coordinating with development partners and kind of moving forward in that regard. Now, one of the big things driving this area and development in this area is the subway project, the Broadway subway project, which it's assuming will extend to UBC. And as such, there will be a Jericho stop right in the center of this development. So when I mentioned off the top, multiple buildings, including up to 49 stories. They're going to have 2 or 3 49-story towers in West Point Grey. So of course, very different than what we've seen in the past. And this stop will basically be right where those 3 towers are. So that'll be the hub. It'll be a low vehicle area as well. They're not going to require for as much parking as they do in other areas of the city. So just a huge scope and a big change to what's happening on the west side of Vancouver. Now, one of the interesting things you could say with this project is the First Nations communities, they own this land, and they will continue to do so. Even as this project moves forward, even as units go for sale, there will of course be purpose-built rental and rental units in there, but they will continue to own that land forever, in perpetuity essentially, by selling what are called leasehold stakes in the properties. Now, leasehold stakes, they are not extremely common, but you can find them around the Lower Mainland. You'll see them in North Vancouver, you'll see them in the UBC area, SFU area, Tawasin. Oftentimes this land is owned by the First Nations, or it's owned by the Crown, the government themselves. And the difference between a leasehold stake in a piece of property, even if it's a condo, and what we call a freehold stake, is when you buy a leasehold, you're buying the specific unit itself, but you're not buying any rights to the land. And generally how it works is when you buy this leasehold property, the land is on a long-term lease. Most often we see a 99-year lease for the land. Sometimes that lease is prepaid. Sometimes there's a payment that has to be made monthly towards the land as well. So the key differentiator is leasehold. You don't own the land. That's how the Jericho Lands are going to play out as development moves forward. So the First Nations will hold on to it, and then as that expires, you get closer to expiry, either that lease gets renewed or the land gets taken back. You see this more commonly in the UK, where the Crown owns a lot of land, and they do a lot of apartment buildings where they are leasehold interests that they are selling. So this is essentially how the Jericho Lands is going to look for its entirety. Would not surprise me if developers in other areas start looking at whether this could be a feasible opportunity to sell leasehold interests. The reason why a city may look and may actually be okay with this type of development is when you're purchasing a leasehold, generally you're paying much less than a property of similar size, age, characteristics. You're paying a lot less for the leasehold. So the way that to identify the leasehold, it's really tough when you are looking at different properties on the MLS to figure which is which. But very often you'll see a property that is newer, that looks amazing. The price almost looks too good to be true. And very often this is because it is a leasehold property where you wouldn't be owning any underlying land. But again, I could see developers broaching or going down this road of this whole leasehold scenario, because obviously as land costs increase, it's an opportunity for the developer to hold on to that land for a longer period of time. From the city's perspective, housing becomes more affordable in a leasehold scenario. I don't personally like leasehold. Like for myself, I wouldn't purchase a leasehold property. My clients, when they come to me and they ask me about leaseholds, I let them know that if there's any way that you can purchase a freehold property, 9 times out of 10, that's going to make more sense for you. In certain instances, perhaps if you are older, it's going to be your final place. You're not necessarily passing property down to family members. Your scenario might be a little different, but for most people, freehold is the way to go. And as time passes, as you get closer to the end of that lease, of that land lease, the value goes down, of course, of that property because there's uncertainty. So another big differentiator between leasehold and freehold is the freehold property is going to appreciate more. The leasehold property is not going to have the same level of appreciation. So circling back to Jericho Lands, that's how it's all going to play out. It's about 90 acres. As mentioned, there'll be park spaces and childcare. It's going to be a full community, some industrial uses, hotel, you name it, going to play out over the next 2 or 3 decades. So that's going to be something very exciting to watch, and also to see whether this is going to pave the way, open the door for more developments like this in the city of Vancouver. All right, want to switch gears and talk very quickly about pre-sales and what's happening specifically in Surrey Central. A developer right now is launching for the first time a concrete high-rise with only a 10% deposit. A 10% deposit until completion time, which is expected to be in 2028. To give you a bit of background, usually with a concrete high-rise is that requires more capital from the developer. Developers are generally asking for 20%. In the past, in hot markets, I've seen up to 25% as a deposit on these concrete high-rises. We have a developer who has been building for decades, launching at 10% until 2028. Now, if you follow my channel, if you've watched my videos, I've said in the past, you always have to look at pre-sale projects in their totality. You can't just look at a deposit. You can't just look at an assignment fee. You can't just look at the price. You have to look at all of the components of a pre-sale offering to see whether it makes sense. And oftentimes, projects will get launched with, for example, 0% assignment fee, huge bonuses, lower deposits. But when doing so, the developer is actually making up for asking a higher price for those units. Now, in this case, with this Surrey Central presale, that's not the case. The pricing is actually very attractive. It's at market. It's where it should be. And yet they're only asking the 10% deposit. looking a little bit deeper, it's always good to kind of get an idea why a developer may be doing this, because obviously if a developer is building, they're gonna want to collect as much capital as possible while still capitalizing on the buyers that are in the market. And I think we're starting to see now, as the market picks up, it gets a little bit hotter, more pre-sale buyers, more buyers in general out there, developers are going to start coming to the table and wanting to take advantage and launch their projects quickly. In a slower market, you'll often find that project launches are staggered. There's a little bit of controlling of the inventory depending on whose projects are coming forth and how those are timed out in terms of their launches. Now, as the market gets warmer, developers want to jump in. And what I think is happening here with this project specifically, 10% deposit, there is another larger name developer that is also launching in Surrey Central within the next few weeks. And I think this is the initial developer here wanting to obviously capitalize on the buyers and make sure they get their share of the buyers. It's a reputable developer, good pricing, only a 10% deposit. So in this case, what we're seeing is the consumer ends up winning. This is not a low deposit to try and make up for something under the radar that they're trying to get away with a higher price or anything like that. This is an offering that says, look, we want to make sure that we capture the buyers and we're going to incentivize the buyers. And again, the consumer wins. And now, looking forward into the rest of this year, I think we're going to see more of this. I think we're going to see a lot more developers seeing this market pick up, realizing that this is the time to put the projects in place, to be launching projects. I think we're going to see more project launches this year than we did last year, and probably a lot more competition between developers in order to incite the buyers and to bring the buyers in. So I think this could be a good year of opportunity on the pre-sale side. Now, again, if you followed my channel, I cover a lot of topics surrounding pre-sale risks, what to look for in disclosure statements, how to protect yourself. So this will still need to happen. You'll still need to protect yourself and make sure you're choosing the right projects, the right developers. But again, if you're in the market for pre-sale, you're wondering whether now might be a good time, I do think there's going to be opportunity through this year. Now, before I end off this video, I get a lot of clients coming to me looking specifically for pre-sales and looking at them for rental purposes. The rental market in Vancouver, it's just been deemed the toughest market in Canada by the CMHC, a 0.9% vacancy rate, and it's been fueled by, as we've talked about on my channel, heavy immigration numbers and population growth here in our province, and that's going to continue moving forward. And so for people that are looking for pre-sales, or they're looking for condos for investment for rental purposes, one thing I want to mention to everyone when we're shopping around for these types of condos is try not to splurge on the extras. When you walk into a pre-sale center, you will be enticed by a lot of different extras that you could pay towards your pre-sale. The upgraded cabinetry in the bedroom, the extended island. There's all these sort of upgrades that you might see in a show home. When you walk in, of course, they're meant to capture your eye, and in certain scenarios, they make a lot of sense, especially if you're going to purchase it as a principal residence, you're going to move in, they might make a lot of sense. But if you're purely buying for rental, keep in mind that rental is commodity driven. You don't necessarily need to add all of these extras because you generally won't get paid back for the extra thousands of dollars you're putting into a purchase price. So just keep that in mind. Rental investments, you want to look for specific floor plans as well. If you want more info on that, send me a message. I can let you know what I look for when it comes to rental condos on the pre-sale side as well as existing resale condos. But you want to look for these specific floor plans, lower floors, the lowest price. You don't necessarily need views. You're not going to get paid back for being 10 floors higher. So there's all of these little nuances we look for when you're purchasing a condo specifically for rental versus when you're purchasing it for yourself to reside in. So there you have it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this week's video. If you did, hit the like button, because what that does is it takes the video and it sends it out to more people so they can learn from it as well. And if you enjoy this weekly real estate content, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss next week's video. And lastly, if you're in the Vancouver area or the Fraser Valley and you wanted to chat with me one-on-one about your real estate situation, you can book me for a free call in the Calendly link below, or just send me a text, give me a call, shoot me an email, whatever is easiest for you. I'd be happy to chat with you. But I want to thank you for watching this week's video, and I look forward to seeing you in next week's video.